Hello and welcome to the Groupthink Podcast. In this week's episode, we have one of our favorite edgelord Twitter trolls, Jacob Airey, once again for his second appearance on the podcast. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Thank you for having me on.
Sure thing. And I guess we're bringing you on after a summer of relatively not severe controversies, but you've had some fascinating moments of the past few months.
Purely by accident, apparently. I don't try to get into trouble, but I always somehow do.
Let's just say he's the only transcendent troll in right-wing Twitter. So.
True enough.
Which I will say that I feel a little bad for causing that entire ruckus to a small degree, given that it was my comment that everyone immediately just started jumping at you on. So for those who aren't aware. He put up I forget exactly how that conversation on Twitter started, but it was something along the lines of something about there not being transcendent filmmakers, and then immediately I started listing off everyone in my head, and
I said visionary. I think I said visionary directors. But I meant today, like right now. I didn't mean of all time. That was kind of what people were misconstruing.
And that immediately sparked the largest Twitter crap storm I think I've ever seen. I mean,
I blame Ben Shapiro because he actually retweeted that. Yeah, I said Christopher Nolan is the only visionary director today. Was I believe the exact quote. And next thing I know, Ben retweets me. You comment on it, and then film Twitter comes at me like piranhas.
Oh my god.
It's nuts.
I only take partial blame for that. I mean, some of the people I saw going after you, like, there were some big people on film Twitter that were calling you out. Like, I saw Movie Bob going after you. I forget everyone, and it's like, it was the most insane. I never seen my mentions blow up like that before, but...
Yeah, I know. There were some people who were blue checkmark that I didn't recognize, and I had to be told, "Oh, that's a film critic from this YouTube channel or from this magazine." And I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm in the big leagues now. I didn't even realize."
Well, as your boss is well aware, blue checkmark is it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. So
it's true. Yes.
So. I've been doing I don't know if you saw, but I've been doing a tour of a lot of our mutual friends on Twitter, and I've been just kind of talking about what people's thoughts of 2019 in film has been. Specifically, I mentioned to you what I thought it might be fun to start kind of listing off some of the best films of the decade, since that's been on my mind a lot for the past month or so. But I guess we'll start out with. What are your thoughts on this year in film? Because the consensus we've seemed to have come to is that this year has only had only a couple of bright spots.
I agree. I agree with that sentiment. I feel like 2019 has been a year of a lot of fun, awesome, kind of cool films, but very few in what I would consider like great films. You know what I mean? So like, we've got Aladdin, which the Disney remake, which was getting a lot of hate, but I actually thought it was a fun film. I'm not saying it was great or it was as good as the original, obviously, but I just thought it was entertaining. It kept my attention. I wasn't looking at my phone the whole time. The music was terrible, except for A Friend Like Me, but all the other music was bad. But the movie itself, I thought was fun. So yeah, that's kind of my take on 2019. Just occasionally we get like these spigots of like, oh wow, that blows my mind, but mostly it's just been kind of couch potato films, as I like to call them. You can just sit, turn off your brain, and have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, almost everything that's coming to mind right now is Disney stuff, which their imminent monopolization of the film market is. It's getting more and more terrifying by the day, especially now that the entirety of the internet has decided that they're going to drag every single company that is willing to defer to China on everything. So, which is long overdue, but I mean,
I have a lot of because for those of you who don't know, I'm a conservative, and I have a lot of conservatives because I kind of go easy on Disney. because yes, I do think that they're taking over the market, and at some point maybe monopoly laws will kick in or whatever. But I'm kind of like, well, right now they're putting out content that you can at least take your nephew to go see. I don't really see Sony or Paramount or Viacom doing that. It's kind of like they're just, everyone else is either doing like these really good these really good films, but they just not at the output Disney is doing, or they're doing films that are just for the critics. They're not really for audiences. And so but Disney, they're doing the family film, and they have cornered that market. They have overtaken Warner Brothers officially, especially these last 3 years. So I get flack from the right about this all the time, how I'm kind of easy on Disney with that regards. But my thing is, well, hey, it's a free market, and if Disney is buying up the market at an unfair pace, then we'll worry about it. But right now, it just seems like they're just putting out content people want to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree that I don't hate Disney. I know that there's a lot of people that are freaking out about it, and I'm nervous about it in some ways. I mean, the one rumor that really got me worried about it was supposedly that they're going to start killing revival screenings for 20th Century Fox movies, which that's
not good.
Yeah, so I went and saw Alien over the weekend because I'm like, this might be my last chance I ever get to see Alien ever. So, and I mean, between that and the fact that they haven't really announced any like sequels to any of the 20th Century Fox franchises yet since the buyout, and it's kind of worrying as to figure out where they're actually going to take a lot of their stuff, because now it's all under their umbrella. I mean, I wouldn't surprise me if they brought Miramax back or something and just being like, oh, we're going to do Alien movies under Miramax or something. But so it's not like it can't work, and I think Disney is at least they're intelligent enough to know 90% of the time where the money is, and so they tend to invest there. I mean, the fact that Lion King was one of the second highest grossing movie of the year this year is kind of, they know something we don't, which is immensely depressing, because I was one of those people that absolutely refused to go to see that, and I'm like, so I agree they're not the most evil thing in the world, but I'm not necessarily happy with some of the decisions they're making. That said, I've already pre-ordered Disney Plus, so.
Well, and that's a good point. It's kind of like what I was saying is, I can't take my nephew to see Green Book. I haven't. Now, I'm picking Green Book specifically because I have not seen it. So
I actually like it a lot. So it's pretty good.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I'm sure it's that's why I picked it, because I haven't seen it, so I don't have an opinion on it. But I can't take my nephew to see Green Book. He will be bored out of his mind. But I can take my nephew and my niece to see The Lion King. So here, Disney already has 3 tickets from me, and so I think that's where Disney's weapon is right now. Hopefully, we've seen like Warner Brothers and, ironically enough, Nickelodeon partner up to do the Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which was awesome. It doesn't get as much credit as it deserves. So hopefully other companies will catch on to this, and because that was kind of my criticism in the early 2010s, was there wasn't a whole lot of family movies coming out, and right now they're only coming out for Disney. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, but that's just something that Disney has cornered right now, and it's helping them win.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see some more revival from the other ones, because for a while Sony and DreamWorks were on par with Disney for a lot of the stuff. And
oh yeah, 100%.
Pixar is in a weird place because it seems to, well, other than Onward, which looks pretty good, they've mostly been on the sequel train for the past 5 years or so, and that's kind of made me not happy with them for most of their stuff. So yeah, I could see this.
Illumination, they're into the sequel thing right now.
Oh gosh, I won't see any Illumination movies at the moment, just because I'm like, I'm not interested in either of your major franchises. I'm like, Despicable Me was cute when I was in high school, but
exactly.
I have no desire as an adult to see Minions. I am beyond caring at this point, and I don't have kids yet, so I'm not at the point where I have to pretend to gawk at like kid shows and being like, "Oh, this is so cute."
Yeah, exactly.
Like weird tangent. I know people that have kids, and then the people start having kids, they get into this thing where they start really like either ironically or unironically enjoying kids shows, and I'm like, how do you watch this?
Well, for me, it's a weakness for me too, because I like animation in general. I really love anime. I really love, especially like the '90s era Saturday morning cartoons. I grew up in that. So yeah, it's so funny that one morning, my wife had been sick the night before, and so I was just letting her sleep in, and I was like, I wonder what I should watch. Like, I'll just watch a movie until she wakes up. And I opened up Hulu. There was How to Train Your Dragon 3, and I'm like, okay, why not? And and I had a good time. It's a fun film. So yeah, I definitely see that. I guess it's a millennial thing where we go to see these kids movies unironically, or we'll drag one of our friends' kids to go see it just so we can. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot too. I mean, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to get the Clint Eastwood vibe to it, where it's starting to. I'm not as into it as I used to be, but I also think the animated films aren't quite as good as they were 5 years ago. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Even with like How to Train Your Dragon 3, like they didn't even add the 3 because it's been so long since the second one, but like that one I thought was inferior to both of its prequels, and I even thought it was inferior to both the Kung Fu Panda sequels, but which is weird, just because for a while DreamWorks was doing really, really good, and now can't really think of anything else they've got going for them right now.
I slightly disagree. I do agree 3 is not as good as 1, but I did like it better than 2. But I think that was because animation-wise, it was better than 2, and so I think that's what pushed it over that mark for me. But I agree with it. It wasn't as good as 1 for sure. 1 is still same with Kung Fu Panda. I actually enjoyed 2 and 3. Another DreamWorks franchise, but 1 is still the best. Hands down.
Fun story. So I like to buy posters cheap at Family Video. I don't know what I'm ever gonna do with this, but I bought a 6-foot-long Kung Fu Panda 3 poster at Family Video, and I'm gonna
nice.
at some point I'm gonna find a wall to publicly deface with this, but. That might get me thrown in prison for bad taste. I don't know. I just remember that.
I have all these autographs from the Comic Cons I go to, and I couldn't find a place to hang them, because they're just in the way. You don't really know what to do with them. So my closet, I just got blue tack, and now that's what I do. It's just all my autograph stuff. I'm just blue tacking to my closet. So that way I can still see them, but then they're not out defacing, one of my living room walls or whatever. So that's been a fun thing for me to do.
I don't have that much autographed stuff that's actually framed. I think I've got like 3 posters. One of them's behind me, and the other 2 I think are on the staircase. But most of my autographed stuff is like books, so I can't really like display it anywhere. Oh, this one's actually kind of fun. I don't know if you might like it, being a dirty Republican and all. Can you see it?
What is it?
It's a signed Woody Allen poster.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't see what it is. Is it Manhattan?
Yeah, it's Manhattan.
Okay.
It was fun. I've
actually never seen a Woody Allen film. As a person, I think he's disgusting, but I would not be opposed to watching one of his films. A lot of filmmakers are disgusting people. So
I'll send you Kyle Smith's article on him, because he has a good piece on Woody Allen's bad past. But if I have a fun habit where I like to go on eBay and put criminally low offers on things. That was on sale for I think $600. I talked him down to like $200. So
oh, nice.
I that probably makes me a horrible person, but I'll just be like, whoa, this thing's on sale for $200. I'll give you 20. Every once in a while, it works.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I did a couple of humanitarian missions to Mexico, and that's what you do in Mexico. You walk up to a place and you talk them down. So I've done that a couple of times. Like, you want me to pay $50 for an autograph? No, I'll give you $25 for it. I've been kind of known for doing that as well. So
I don't know. I mean, my example's probably a little more extreme there, but I'm trying to figure out what else I have signed. I got a couple things signed in here, actually. I got Have you heard of Wakaliwood?
Of what?
Wakaliwood?
No, I have not.
It's you should look it up because it's a fun. Or I'll send you a video about it later. It's a film studio in Uganda of all places that makes ultra violent action movies, and I have a bunch of signed stuff from them because they came to Chicago a couple months ago, and I got to meet their producer. So, but yeah, I got a bunch of their stuff, and I also got a bunch of Mystery Science Theater stuff signed downstairs. But I think that's all the stuff I have framed, other than my weird Bill Whittle signing over here, but.
I've got the cast of the Aurora signed DVD. I've got a signed copy of The Room. I actually just got The Room signed this weekend. I went to LA Comic Con and Tommy Wiseau was just there, and so I got a picture with him. And yeah, I know he had a booth set up all weekend, but he had not been there. And then I happened to go in the last day, and at first I was like, "Oh, it's not him. It's a cosplayer," or because all his crew was dressed like him. So it's one of his crews. And then I heard him say. I heard him say something, and I went, "Oh my gosh, it's really him!" And so I went over and I was like, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And the guy says, "Well, you have to buy." His assistant said, "Well, you have to buy merch." And I said, "Okay, how much is a DVD?" And he told me the price. I was like, "I'll take it." And so I got a picture with him and a signed Blu-ray copy of The Room, which I'll treasure forever.
Oh man, that's freaking great. I should ask about that. You went to LA Comic Con this weekend. How was that?
It was actually a lot of fun. I was really disappointed in the panels. Last year they had a lot of great panels. They had a really good Transformers one. They had a really great one about writing scripts for animated films. Those were two of my favorite ones. This time, though, the only one that was remotely interesting to me kept being moved around, and so I just didn't go to it. There was only one the whole weekend, but the stuff on the main stage was pretty cool. They had a Kim Possible reunion, the Office reunion. Those were all pretty neat. I went to the Drake Bell Q&A. He was probably the best out of all of them. Getting him one-on-one with just a moderator in the audience, so I love that. I got to meet one of my favorite film directors of all time, John Milius. He was there with the Legion of M, which they crowdfund films, for those who don't know. They crowdfunded a documentary about him, so he was there signing posters of the documentary. He was super nice. I got a couple of pictures with him. So that was really cool because I even like underappreciated John Milius films everyone knows Red Dawn, Conan the Barbarian, Dillinger, films like that. But I like The Wind and the Lion. I actually think it's kind of an unsung classic. So it was really cool getting to talk with him for about 30 seconds. You get right after the picture, you get to tell him, "Hey, I love your films." And he's for those who don't know, he had a stroke a couple of years ago, so that's why he hasn't been directing stuff. But it was still cool getting to see him because, like I said, I love his films. I still haven't seen all of them just because a lot of them are TV movies and hard to find on DVD, but I plan on hopefully, especially now after meeting him, I'm psyched. I want to watch all of his films now.
Nice. I actually have a good Comic-Con story. I don't usually go to panels when I go. The big one around here is C2E2, which is they hold it at the largest convention center in Chicago, and it's one of the most insane size-wise things you'll find in the area. I've been at all the local cons and stuff, but that's the best one. The only panel I think I've ever actually been to at that was a discussion between Frank Miller and Stan Lee a couple of years ago.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it was so crowded they actually had to do spill-off rooms, and I got stuck in one of those. So we were just watching a live stream of the panel as opposed to actually in the room with it, but. Holy crap! It was the funniest and the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life, because Stan Lee because of his hearing problems, he has what's it called when you have the hearing aids. He couldn't hear the microphone on the monitors, so every time someone would talk over the microphone, he'd immediately lean over to the person next to him and say, "What'd he say?" It was a little depressing because you could tell he was a little senile, or just because he was obviously he's struggling with that. But the conversation they had was so strange and so funny, I think even Comic Book Resources picked up on just how strange it was. Like, it was just talking about how Frank Miller was the sole man who was keeping the fedora alive as a fashion statement, and I'm like, oh, the things you don't know. Yeah, I think I've got some recordings of it somewhere, but I'll have to find those and post those because it was the funniest thing. But yeah, I'm glad I got to see that before he passed. I never ended up getting anything signed by Stan Lee, unfortunately, but he's always had like the $100 signing lines at Comic-Con. So
right, yeah, I'm the proud owner of some original Amazing Spider-Man issues from Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and I'm going to hang on to those for a long time, because both Ditko and Stan Lee have passed, and that was a real shock to the system. In fact, on the Dailywire, the day he passed, I actually went to talk to the managing editor, and I was like, okay, I'm the comic book guy. I'm the only comic book guy on staff. Let me write his obit for the Dailywire. And he goes, oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. So I go back to my desk, hit refresh. Stan Lee has passed away. And I was like, what? I just talked to the managing editor. But someone apparently had gotten to it before me. I can't remember who it was. It was either, I want to say it was my good friend and man, Presto Giacomo. But someone had actually put it, and we have in the editorial thing, and had gotten approved by another editor, and so it had got published. But I was pretty depressed, but I got to write it on. Of course, I wrote an obit on my blog, but you just so that I was still like, no.
Yeah, I could see you wanting to take a hit out on her, but
I can't remember if it was her or because Emily Zanotti, she's right for Heat Street, so she's a little bit of a nerd too, and although she's more into gaming, I believe, but I want to say it was either her or Emily Zanotti, but I can't remember.
Emily's from Chicago, right?
Day, I was just so sad that day. It was like when Adam West passed away. I was just heartbroken.
Emily's from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
I've been trying to reach out to her. I want to have her on at some point, but anyway, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What you said you had an errand you had to run tonight?
Yeah, later on.
Okay, I just want to make sure you have enough time to do that, because in my mind it's much later, because I know it's like what, 7:30 out there right now. It's
yeah, about 7:30.
Yeah, it's 9:30 here, and I'm already past my old person bedtime. So I have developed the bodily integrity of a newborn kitten. So by 9:30, I'm already ready for bed. Anyway. So I thought like I said earlier, I think it might be fun to kind of start thinking through what the best movies of this decade have been, because obviously we're going to hit that point where later this, 2 months out now from all those lists starting to drop. I think IndieWire actually put theirs out somehow, and I don't know how they managed to pull that off, but...
Well, yeah, especially with Joker just coming out, and I have a feeling, I guess Richard Jewell... I can't remember, it comes out in December, right? So it's going to barely make it in, and I have a feeling everyone's going to update their list, because that movie looks really good. And of course, it's Clint Eastwood, and it's got a stellar-looking cast. So I'm actually going to wait till after Richard Jewell comes out to release mine on my blog. But right now, I'm happy to talk about some. Of course, it could suck. I can't remember that other film Clint Eastwood did with the soldiers on the train.
Oh yeah, something 17 to Paris or something like that.
Right. But I doubt it. This one looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Eastwood's kind of hit or miss, but when he hits, it hits like the mule.
Right.
So yeah, I'm trying to cut this down to a reasonable list, but so far I'm stuck at 50. So
a little bit over mine. I've got 38.
Yeah, I'm sure if I put more thought into this, I could probably come up with a lot more. I mean, I want to cut a lot of these down, and my hard and fast rule for this is that I don't use more than one film per director, because there's a couple that I would probably put like the same for, because like there's probably at least 2 or 3 Coen Brothers films I'd throw up there, stuff like that. And
for me, it's I sometimes I mistake my, like, if I like a film and it entertains me, because that's one of the ways I rate it was, did it actually entertain me? So sometimes I go, wait, did this just entertain me, or was it one of the best films of the decade?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I land. So no, I totally get it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ones on here that are probably a little bit too me oriented to be. If I'm being honest, like I probably shouldn't have a Wakaliwood movie on here, but I threw the Muppet movie on there for good measure. Which if you go back and watch it, it is very good. So, well, what have some of yours so far?
Well, I've got to throw in the very first Avengers film, Marvel's The Avengers. It was actually, I believe, the last film to have Paramount attached to it. I could be wrong. Some people, I could be
I think
wrong.
you're right.
It might be Age of Ultron, but I put that one on there. Joss Whedon had a big job to do with uniting all these characters who had been in different movie companies at the time, and I thought he pulled it off really well. He did what Joss Whedon does best. I have the King's Speech on here. I know now people are saying, oh, that movie was just Oscar bait. It wasn't as good as X film about this person. But I actually think that's underscoring a little bit. I enjoy the King's Speech. I thought Colin Firth delivered an amazing performance as David. Or I'm sorry, not David. That was the other brother, but that was Guy Pearce. But he did a good job as that character as well. But anyway, yeah. So those are some of mine. My third one that I have on the list is, and I know this one's a little controversial, but it's Bridge of Spies. I actually think
That's on mine too. I like that a lot.
Oh, okay, that's good. Because I know Steven Spielberg has kind of hit a slump, but I feel like Bridge of Spies is old school Spielberg. I felt like it kind of got ignored because of the stinkers he's done, but I really think that Bridge of Spies, it's like, oh, this is good. This is what Spielberg was made to do.
I don't want to cut you off, but I think that I like a lot of his recent drama stuff. I mean, there's something kind of like really nice about just going to a really quiet drama movie nowadays, like that's in between all the stuff. Like the only thing I think the three big ones are Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, and The Post. The only thing the only thing I don't particularly like about them is some of the intentional and unintentional posturing in those movies, like how when Lincoln came out, he made a movie about how sometimes you have to be a politician and do dirty dealings, and it was 2012. And then in 2017, he made a movie about how politicians must always be questioned all the time. So I'm like, gee, I wonder what happened in 5 years that made you give two completely different stances. But I mean, other than that, I like them a lot. Like all those a lot. I mean, even The Post more than I care to admit. But but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so I also have Inception. Nolan is probably my favorite. Obviously, my favorite director. I know for some reason there's like this contingent of Nolan fans that think Interstellar is better than Inception, and I don't know how that's possible. I think Inception is a far superior film, which Interstellar wasn't a Nolan film originally. It was supposed to be a Spielberg film. Him and his brother Jonathan rewrote it to be a Nolan film, so I actually think that's the fault of that movie. But Inception, I think, is just a fantastic look into time and how we relate to relationships, in our mind especially. Next one is a foreign film. I'm not a huge foreign film intake, which was some of the criticism I was getting on that Twitter thing, is I'm not a huge connoisseur, especially of Euro films. I call them Euro trash films. I think sometimes people just get excited about European films because they're from Europe. But anyway, this is The Grandmaster. It's a Chinese film about Ip Man, who trained Bruce Lee. And The Grandmaster was made because of the Ip Man quadrilogy, which kind of goes through his early days, but they're very, very fictional. Grandmaster was like, no, this is the real biopic, and so they cut out like a lot of the drama that was in the 4 Ip Man films. And but I think it's a phenomenal film. It's probably one of the best biopics to come from China and Hong Kong. Very well made, beautifully acted. The actor who plays Ip Man in that film is escaping me at the moment, but he did a phenomenal performance. Next is a personal favorite film of mine, Hell or High Water.
Oh,
that
nice.
Movie should have won. That movie should have won Best Picture. Jeff Bridges, Chris Pine, incredible performances. It was, and also too, it got Texas right. This is one of my complaints about Californians making movies about Texans. Or they can't get, or New Yorkers making movies about Texans, they can't get it right. Hell or High Water got how Texans who are on the poorer side live, what they think, even how they dress. I mean, it was, besides the phenomenal story and acting, it was spot on, and I really appreciated that.
I love that scene where they go to the little restaurant in the middle of nowhere, and the old cranky lady just running the restaurant and being like, "No one who's ever been to this restaurant in 30 years has ordered anything but steak and iced tea."
Yep, and I've been to similar restaurants. But
have you liked any other Taylor Sheridan movies?
Say again?
Have you liked any other, that screenwriter, Taylor Sheridan, have you liked any more of his movies? Or have you seen any?
Yeah, I thought Red River was good. He wrote that one, didn't he?
Yeah, he directed it too.
Yeah, that was a good film. I think it's on my list. I'm not sure exactly where, but that was a really good film. I actually was surprised because I didn't really like the trailer, but then I watched the movie and I was like, whoa, this is a really good film. I love the taking noir aspects and putting them like in rural communities. I think that is and Red River is certainly that kind of film. I really enjoyed that. But should I continue?
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to let you. I was gonna let you go.
Okay.
He's rolling.
So I have The Martian, James Cameron. I feel like that was a kind of return to form for him. And a lot of people were like, when in the whole visionary thing, I feel like James Cameron used to be a visionary director, but he's not really anymore. But I do feel like The Martian was a step in the right direction for him. Next, I had The Fighter.
Do you mean Ridley Scott, or you mean Ridley Scott?
Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry, Ridley Scott. Yes, I'm sorry. I meant Ridley Scott. I said,
yeah.
I've been thinking about James Cameron a lot lately with these Avatar sequels he's announced. But I'm sorry, Ridley Scott. You're right. The Martian is a Ridley Scott film. But I meant the same thing with that. It's really good for returning to film, and Matt Damon is phenomenal in it. I really so was what's his name? The guy who played the guy at NASA Control.
Sean Bean.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say Sean Bean, but Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels. I thought he was great in that film. Next is The Fighter. Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale both are phenomenal in that film. So is Amy Adams. I really enjoyed that film. I thought it really captured the story of the boxers very well. This film, it actually hurts me because it was not nominated at all when it came out. I think it got maybe Best Soundtrack, but I mean, like for I guess upper tier Academy Awards. But Baby Driver. That film is a masterpiece, and I think people are going to remember it as a classic. When I'm old and gray, I'm going to be playing my youngin's Baby Driver because it's a phenomenal film. I won't say it's a perfect film, but I did like it. I think that it should have gotten more accolades than it did. Next is Toy Story 3. I thought that was a perfect. Well, not anymore, but I thought at the time it was a perfect conclusion to the Toy Story arc, especially with the Sid cameo at the end, or where he's taking out the garbage. I was like, oh yeah, this movie's full circle. Like they answered all the questions I felt like, and it was a perfect way to show growing up. Alita Battle Angel is next. And this one, I will admit, it had a little bit of a pacing problem, but it was just really great. I felt the main star in it, what's her name? Her name escapes me. The actress who played Alita, I thought did a great job. Once again, Robert Rodriguez, unsung director. People just need to give him more money because he always manages to pull off good films when he has a lot of money. Spy Kids being an exception. He did that movie on a very low budget, and it's really good. But of course, Arrival. No list. If there is a film, best films of the decade list that doesn't have Arrival, I'm sorry, it's not a legit list. Arrival is a phenomenal film. It does have a little bit of a pacing problem. It's a little slow, but the story is great. Jeremy Renner, Amy Adams pull amazing performances in it, and I think it spoke, about. I had a good. I'm not one who likes to read undertones in films. Obviously, if you read my reviews, that's not really something I'm into. But I feel like Arrival was a really good message about how we communicate with each other and how we relate to one another, especially in this really heightened rhetoric age. Next is A Quiet Place. Love that film. I've noticed that there's kind of a divide on this film because some people say, "Oh, it was good, but it had all these logic problems." Well, yeah, it's about aliens who eat people because they hear them. So yeah, there's going to be some logic problems that slip through. But I thought it was a really good film. Lone Survivor. I would put up what Mark Wahlberg's performance in that film is phenomenal. I feel like they owe him an apology award for him not getting Best Actor for that film. Next is Winter's Bone. Really good indie film. Launched Jennifer Lawrence's career. Of course, now it's recently fizzed out. But I thought that was a good kind of, again, noir in the rural South. I've got to put Standoff at Sparrow Creek. Fantastic indie film. One of the best I've ever seen. And with such a small cast. And not a huge really set. Like, it's filmed all in one place and just really good, because that's always risky. Even on low budget films, they tend to want to send the characters out somewhere. They don't really do that in the Standoff at Sparrow Creek. They're all contained, good psychological thriller. This film, people actually laugh at me because I don't tend to be a bourgeoisie person, but I actually really liked The Artist. And it's about as bougie a film as you could possibly get. French director, French actor, black and white, silent film. But I loved it. I thought it was a really good film about being an artist, being an actor. I thought it told a good story. Gotta go with, after that, definitely Nolan's Dunkirk. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's not really what it was like." Okay, great, whatever. It's still a good movie. It was the only World War II film that made me wish I was British. Of course, then I watched Saving Private Ryan right after that, and I'm all about America again. But Dunkirk, I was like, oh, if I had been British. Now this one, I admit, I put this on here just to annoy people. Dragon Ball Z Battle of the Gods. It was Dragon Ball Z's big comeback because they had tried with Dragon Ball GT. It was an epic failure. And so Akira Toriyama, he got back on the driver's wheel, wrote this film, and it was a huge success. Of course, Funimation brought back the original cast from when they did Dragon Ball Z Kai, and that really paid off. It was a fantastic film. Really introduced some great new characters, so I really enjoyed it. And again, I put this movie on here just to bug the Critics' Choice Awards and all that.
You're gonna make a few people mad with that one.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I'm all about that. Moneyball, I'm not actually a huge Brad Pitt fan, but I did like him in Moneyball. I've got to give credit where credit is due. Jonah Hill 2, great film. I'm also a baseball fan. Obviously, for those who can't see, I'm wearing my Houston Astros shirt because they beat the Yankees tonight. So I'm a huge baseball fan. It's one of the best baseball films out there. Another Spielberg film. I'm breaking your rule about no double, but I've got to go.
Yeah, I noticed.
I got to go with Lincoln. Steven Spielberg. Felt like Bridge of Spies. I felt like it's one of his better modern ones. The next one is another Tom Hanks film. I bet there's a ton of Tom Hanks films. I haven't really counted. But Saving Mr. Banks. Tom Hanks was great as Walt Disney. Another good film about creativity. Me being a fictional writer, I related to. Oh, now her name escapes me, but I related to the lady who created Mary Poppins. Not wanting your baby, as it were, to be taken over, especially by a big conglomerate like Walt Disney Company was at the time. And even then, it wasn't getting the hate that it is now, for sure. Next, another Clint Eastwood film, American Sniper. Love that film. It gets hate for one scene where you can tell that a baby is fake. I know, but I don't think that delegitimizes the whole film. Next is a British film. So breaking my European rule, but The Imitation Game. I thought that was a great film about Mr. Turing, who of course invented the computer. I didn't really know his story. And so after I saw the movie, I actually went back and researched him, and it's actually amazing how much the film gets right. They did take several liberties, like most biopics do, but I felt like it still paid good tribute to his contribution to technology, and it was sad seeing how he was treated at the end of his life.
That movie is weirdly controversial.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I've noticed people on the far left, they tend to hate it for some reason. Something to do with the fact that it kind of brushes over like how he was chemically castrated by the British government, but I disagree.
I felt like they did a good job portraying that. It certainly made me feel empathetic toward him, and even sorry for him. So that's interesting.
I'd have to look it up because it was a weird controversy, and I'm just like, wait, what do you want about exactly? The movie's all about this person being like about his life dealing with that. So
yeah, it's kind of like the fake controversy around Braveheart, where the king throws out his son's gay lover out the window, and they're like, and I saw that scene and I was horrified. But if you talk to a far left person, they would say, "Oh, all the anti-gay people got up and cheered." No one did that. Everyone felt bad for him that he just got murdered. No one thought that. So it probably is something to do with that. I remember I watched a documentary on Mel Gibson, and they had some far left movie critic say that, and I was like, dude, no one thought that. You thought people thought that, and maybe there was a few right-wing blogs, from fringe people saying that, but no one thought that. Everyone felt deeply shocked and horrified by that scene, for sure.
As a bona fide Mel Gibson apologist, I'm tempted to say that's not the point. So, or at least you're right. They're wrong. You're right. So.
Oh yeah. But next on the list is Spotlight, and I have to admit I had to swallow some pride for this one, because I actually, for some reason, did not want to like this film, probably because of the subject matter. It's about the Boston Globe, I believe, exposing the Boston diocese for hiding priests who were molesting children. But it's a fantastic film. The acting is good. The story is good. I felt that they treated the subject matter with reverence. Not the criminals. They did the right thing in that regard. But I just mean the victims, because sometimes with these films they can be exploitive, and I didn't feel that about Spotlight. I felt like they handle on the victims with reverence. Rachel McAdams. What's his name? Who he also plays Howard Stark in Endgame. His name is escaping me. But anyway, that actor, phenomenal roles in it. I thought it was a good film. Next, another animated film, but probably less controversial than my previous one, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I actually was never on the Miles Morales train ride. In fact, when they killed off Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, I thought it was a disaster. I thought they mishandled it. I'm okay with legacy. I'm okay with heroes passing on down, but they killed off Peter Parker and he didn't know who his successor was, and that was a problem for me. So I was never into the Miles Morales. This film made me like Miles Morales as a character. And that to me shows how good of a movie it is. If it could get me, a person who doesn't like the character, to go yes at the end of the film. I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it. Get Out from Your Rock. It's on Netflix now. If it can make me do that, then it's definitely a good film. Because I was prepared not to like it, but I loved it. The animation in it, so unique, very well made. Voice cast, awesome. Next, of course, I got to go with Chappaquiddick. It's kind of an unsung hero film that came out this decade. Ed Helms is in it, Jim Gaffigan, a ton of actors you don't expect, but that was because the filmmakers, I heard in an interview, when they were putting out casting calls, they would tell people it was about Ted Kennedy, and they didn't want to be in it. So it's casted full of comedians, I hate to say this, but has-been actors, and then a bunch of Australian actors. So it was, they had to really work hard to cast this film. It still came off amazing. I didn't feel, because a lot of these political films tend to be partisan, and it being about a Democrat, me being a Republican, again, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I thought it played it straight down the line. It wasn't about partisan politics. It was about Ted Kennedy. And I think that was really good. Hostiles is on this list. A few people have called this an anti-Western, kind of similar to The Searchers. I thought of it more as a gritty Western, but I thought that Christian Bale, oh my gosh, an amazing performance as a man hurt by war, who has seen war, and he has to, for those who haven't seen the movie, Christian Bale plays a U.S. cavalryman who has to bring a Native American family to their tribal land so they can bury the grandfather, but he doesn't want to because he was part of the Indian Wars. And so he has kind of, I don't want to say PTSD, but he definitely has shell shock from that war, and it explores that with a good reverence. Really good film. Next, we were talking about Tommy Wiseau earlier, The Disaster Artist.
Oh man,
fantastic film. James Franco and his brother, who I actually don't really like as an actor, but he was great in this film. They of course play Tommy Wiseau and what's his name?
Greg Sestero.
Yes. Yeah. They made this movie The Room, and this movie is about what happened behind the scenes. Got a great cast: Seth Rogen, all of them. Coming.
All right, we're back. Sorry about that. My CPU had an error again. Go ahead.
Okay. So after Disaster Artist, gotta go with Sword Art Online, Ordinal Scale. I thought it was, ironically enough, I thought it was a perfect conclusion. For those of you unfamiliar, Sword Art Online is an anime. It had two shows actually, Sword Art Online and Sword Art Online 2, but they never really followed up with the ending of the first show, and so this one, the movie Ordinal Scale, wraps it up. I thought it wrapped it up neatly. The animation in it is incredible. It's all about the virtual world. It's in a future where humans can actually link with the internet, and so it creates virtual realities. And I thought that it was a good conclusion for the characters and how it went down. And because one of the things in the first show is these characters are locked in a game and they can't escape in a virtual world, and they have to beat the boss who's at level 100. They get to level 75 and the season ends, but they don't ever go, and it wraps up the storyline, but it doesn't, but you never see what happens at level 100. So Ordinal Scale is kind of about them having to go back and face level 100, and which they don't want to because they were trapped in the game previously, but I thought was a really good wrap up. And then they brought it back, so really good wrap up. And then they brought back a third show. Next is Wind River. We talked about this earlier. Loved Wind River. Fantastic performance. Again, I felt like the trailer did it a disservice. I thought the trailer made it look real messy, but it wasn't. It was a sleek, really well-made film. great standout performances. Next is The Founder. I love that film. Michael Keaton is phenomenal, as well as Nick Offerman. Just a fantastic film through and through. For those of you who don't know, it's about the McDonald's story, and particularly Ray Kroc, who cheated the McDonald's brothers out of the McDonald's franchise. If you have not seen it, every film buff needs to see this movie. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it made me more angry at McDonald's than that stupid McDonald's documentary that everyone I was forced to watch back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I've seen that.
Super Size Me. I forgot the title for it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, I did see that. Yeah, I had to read the book, or not the book. I had to read Fast Food Nation as well. That was the book was a disaster. But anyway, next is Mom's Night Out, which this is kind of an indie comedy. It's a lot of people underestimate it because it's made by a lot of the same folks who make Christian films. So like, oh, there's no way that this movie could be good, but it's got Patricia Heaton in it. It's got Trace Adkins, and it's actually really funny. And again, it's just kind of like a movie that you can turn off your brain and just enjoy it. I would call it a comedy of errors. Just one thing after the other happens really good. Okay, this one's controversial. I don't care. It's my freaking list. Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. I thought this film was incredible. I think it's the best of the modern Star Wars films. I thought it put the war back in Star Wars, and that was really good to see. It was Empire Strikes Back without plagiarizing the story. And I just thought how they did Darth Vader was awesome. Now, you talk to my dad, it's the worst Star Wars films ever made. He hated it more than I hate The Last Jedi. And he says it's because of Darth Vader. He did not like how Darth Vader was shown in the film. He liked it better when Darth Vader's was like Jaws, is how he put it. So, but I loved actually getting to see Darth Vader kick a little bit of butt. That was pretty cool. Next is 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Michael Bay can direct a film. Who would have known that Michael Bay, which I do enjoy his action films for what they are, but who would have thought a Michael Bay film would have been on the best films of the decades? This movie is fantastic. Great cast. It tells a good story without delving into the politics of behind the story, and an important story too about, of course, when there was a riot in Benghazi and they overtook the U.S. embassy there and in Libya. That's the name of the country. And the brave soldiers who tried to rescue as many of the diplomats as they could. Fantastic film. Next is Captain America: Winter Soldier. And me and Wonder Woman 91, we have a running argument on which is better, the original Avengers or Captain America: Winter Soldier. I say it's the first Avengers film, but she says it's Winter Soldier, and we go back and forth about this. But it's a fantastic film. Besides the first Iron Man, it's probably the best standalone Marvel superhero film, in my humble opinion. Like I said, besides Iron Man, I still think Iron Man is a little better, but Winter Soldier certainly is really good. And then next is Avengers: Infinity War. You can read both my reviews. I actually have two reviews up. I have one on Dailywire and I have one on my blog. The Dailywire one is kind of what I call the official review, and then I have a fan review on my blog, so you can find out about that. And then last one on this list, and it's ever growing, but it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I love this movie. It is so awesome. It is it's a millennial film to a T. It's got the humor. It's got the all the Easter eggs you could ask for, and it's got a really good story. And it's a great adaptation of a kind of wannabe manga story, but it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. So that's so far that is my best films of the decade.
Nice. I can't wait until you convince Dailywire to let you post that and proceed to cause all of the controversy. But yeah.
That'll cause controversy with my fellow writer, Paul Bois. He and I have very different views on what a good movie is. And so I can't wait for him. I think he's actually doing the one for the Daily Wire, but I'll probably And that's actually probably better. It'll get Dailywire in less trouble. Me and Paul had a little bit of firefight over Martin Scorsese recently. So.
I can imagine. I know you've been going hard on Scorsese.
Well, to be fair, though, I have never said he's a bad filmmaker. I think Martin Scorsese is an amazing film. I just think his comments were asinine. But I never got on the. To be fair, I never got on the anti-Scorsese train. So just want to throw that out there. I did get a little bit on the anti-Spielberg one with his Netflix comments, but leave my Netflix alone.
I benefit from having the I don't give a crap gene turned up to 11 at all times. So you at times you don't have much chill, and I'm over here just like, dude.
Bill Burr said recently that his wife one time made a comment to him. You're like 0 to 100, and I just know. And he goes, "Hey, I idle at 75," and that's me. I just idle at that 75. I'm ready to go. I defend my MCU, and not the Martha-verse, but for those of you who don't know, that's what I call the DCEU, the Martha-verse. But I do defend my MCU a little bit, and passionately. I'm not afraid to say.
Nice. My list is still, I mean, it's obvious, it's long at this point, but it's still partially under construction because there's a lot. Because in order to keep to my actual rules, I've had to cut a lot of movies I think could probably fit on the list comfortably, and there are also movies I'm tempted to put on the list because I respect the craft, but I have vast ideological differences with, like 12 Years a Slave or Get Out, which obviously that's a hot take in our circle, just like being like, oh, those are good movies, but like, well, the good thing about them is tied in to their message, and that can make it difficult for people who don't necessarily agree with the movies say to process properly. So, but I definitely agree with right at the top of my list. I had Arrival, so we're on the same page there. I also had Inception because I was trying to think of what I consider the best Nolan film this decade. He kind of had that post Dark Knight slump right after Heath Ledger died, and I think that was at least in full effect through Interstellar. But yeah, Inception was probably the best thing he's done after the Dark Knight. So, and since it was 2010, it's just in time to fit this list, thankfully. I was debating what Marvel movie I want to put on the list. My split at the moment is Avengers and Guardians. I mean, I recently kind of started thinking about what I consider the best Marvel movies, and it struck me that you could probably boil down the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe into 3 legitimate masterpieces, that being the first Iron Man, the first Avengers, and the first Guardians. Just because of those were the 3 movies where the moment those movies came out, the entire sea changed around the movies in a way that none of the other ones did, and I think that kind of speaks to just how much they connected with people. Sure. I mean, obviously, Winter Soldier gets applause for being what it is, and a lot of them get. And to be fair,
the reason Winter Soldier is on there and not Guardians of the Galaxy is because I tend to like the darker superhero or I won't seeing Captain America kind of go through that phase. I like that better than I did the storyline in the Guardians. Although I would rank the first Guardians up really high on that list.
Yeah, I mean, I Guardians is also more of a space movie than a superhero movie, controversially speaking. So yeah, so it's more of its own thing almost than Captain is. Let's see what else. I was gonna throw a Woody Allen movie on, but there's only been the 2 good Woody Allen movies this decade it's hard to figure out which one I'd actually want to put on the list because they're both really good in their own way. Which is Midnight in Paris and Blue Jasmine. I guess I'm probably gonna end up going with Blue Jasmine just because it's. I guess I'd say it's probably a better written film than Midnight in Paris, even though I like that one better. Bridge of Spies, which we agreed with. I'm throwing Creed on there, which I don't know if that's controversial or not. Yeah, I think that's probably not a controversial one. Death of Stalin, which I know your bosses all rave about, so I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it yet. every time I go to the Redbox to get it, it's rented. I'm like, I'm gonna have to start checking the app. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth watching or renting, but it's one of those things where the movie had such small distribution that it was hard to find. Like, I think that it only got like a 1 week theatrical distribution, and never got a Blu-ray distribution, to my knowledge. So that's how small it is. I threw Drive on there just because it's the only Nicholas Winding Refn movie from this decade that I can tolerate. But all of
I
his
didn't like that film.
it's not an audience friendly film, but I've watched it a handful of times and it really opened up to me. So especially when you like start kind of digging into what like the main characters' thought processes are in the movie and stuff like that. There's a really good analysis video by Chris Stuckman about it. It's one of those things where it's not easy, but it really opens up. I think Edge of Tomorrow's on the list, which I don't know if you've seen that. Have you seen it?
I have not seen Edge of Tomorrow. That's the one. Die, repeat, die, right?
Yeah, it's the Tom Cruise dies 1,000 times movie. So, which is great if you either if you like Tom Cruise or if you hate Tom Cruise, that works great. So,
I'm ambivalent about him.
then yeah, you'll feel great about it. I threw. I don't know whether I want to put... I like Alex Garland, director, a lot, so I'm either going to put Ex Machina or Annihilation on. I don't know which yet, though, because I haven't quite figured out which one I think is the better one of his, but... Hacksaw Ridge, which wasn't a hard pick, obviously. Have you seen that?
I have not seen it yet, but I need to, because I actually am a Mel Gibson fan.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 3 years. You're missing out. How?
I know, and other movies have come out in between. I actually was going to go see it in the theaters, and the day I was supposed to go, something happened, and so I requested a ticket refund, and I just haven't seen it since.
It came out the same day Doctor Strange did, I think, so it had competition. So
okay, that's probably what happened.
All right. I threw Her on the list, although I don't remember if I think that's a good movie or not. I had to go back and watch that. I threw... there's a movie called Holy Motors I have on the list, which I really like, which is a French film. Inception, I said. I'm trying to figure out which Coen Brothers film needs to go on the list. The moment I'm leaning on Inside Llewyn Davis, because... Well, now I'd have to think about it now, because I think they've got... 4 movies this decade?
They were busy.
Not as much as they used to be. They had like 5 or 6 the previous decade. Because nowadays they do more screenwriting than like directing, because they wrote Bridge of Spies and Unbroken, I think. So, Lego Movie, which that may or may not be controversial, but I thought that's legitimately a great film. So. Mad Max.
Have you seen the second one? Because I was going to see it, but I've heard mixed reviews about it.
I like it a lot. It's vastly inferior to the first one, and I think it ends on a point where they really don't leave any more options for sequels going forward. But it's a very fun, happy movie. So I'd say I'd probably like Lego Batman a little bit more, but if you like the first Lego movie, it's worth watching at least once. Muppet movie. There's a movie I just saw earlier this year called Never Look Away. It's a German film from the director of The Lives of Others, if you've ever seen that.
I have seen The Lives of Others a long time ago.
Yeah, he had his first film in like a decade out this year, and it's one of my favorite things I've seen in years. And that's definitely going to be really high on my list towards the end of the year. The Nice Guys, the Shane Black movie, I threw that on, which is not complicated. It's fun. I threw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I think that's the best of Tarantino's recent films and the most the least edgy, weirdly enough. But
I'm not a huge Tarantino fan, and to be frank, I've only seen Pulp Fiction. Now, I was hammered when I watched it. But everyone laughs when I say that. It's really true.
It's a good sounds like a good story.
And I just wanted to watch something, so I put on Pulp Fiction. and I remember not liking it. I guess I need to watch it sober. Give it another chance.
Oh man, that movie would probably be a bad trip. Let's see, Pacific Rim, which I know that movie tends to get a lot of people either really excited or really, really mad when you bring it up. This is like youth, but
I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I mean, all of Del Toro's other movies recently, they're either not quite at the snuff or they're movies quietly advocating bestiality in a strange way. So, and winning Oscars for it. So, sign of the times. You threw on 13 Hours. I added Pain and Gain, which I am determined never to watch again. But it is an amazing film. It is the most disgusting.
I haven't seen Pain and Gain, which surprises me because I'm usually a Michael Bay acolyte.
Wait, it's a Michael Bay film, but it's his attempt at trying to do like a Coen Brothers dark comedy, and so it's exceptionally dark, exceptionally disgusting and gross. But it's an amazing story about absolutely stupid and terrible people just destroying themselves. So it's an amazing experience. I threw the Raid Redemption on the list, which I don't think that's super controversial. I don't think I know an action movie that's been quoted as much as that movie has been this decade. So, Silence from Scorsese. Skyfall.
I know I'm controversial on this. I didn't like that film. I thought it was overly long, and I thought the message in it was terrible. And me and Jeremy Boring get into this argument because he says it's the greatest modern Christian film. I say it's the greatest modern anti-Christian film. He and I go back and forth about this every once in a while, but I actually didn't like that film very much. And like I said, I like Martin Scorsese. I think he's a good director. I just thought that it was a misfire for him. And I know it was kind of a passion project. I think he'd been trying to get it made since the 90s, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I know a lot about it, and I can talk pretty confidently about it, but I don't think it's... I think it's a movie that is very strident in its willingness to question Christianity, but I don't think it's anti-Christian. At least, if only just because the author who wrote the book version of it was a very passionate Christian, and because Scorsese, despite being lapsed, isn't an atheist. So I think it's just a piece of art from someone who's has an extremely complicated understanding of religion. So
that could be.
It's not that's I think that's why the film is like spends the first hour and a half extolling the virtues of religion before the last act kind of starts taking a turn. So
right, and that is what bothered me, because to me it never really came back to and me being a Christian, I didn't feel like it came to me. It didn't praise the actions of the Japanese of the Inquisitors, but to me it said they were right. They were wrong in what they were doing, but they were right. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that was kind of my feel. And to me, in that sense, it legitimized the torture that Christians went through. So that, and I thought that was kind of a slap in the face to those martyrs. But that, like I said, I could be reading too much into it.
I don't think you are. I mean,
maybe I need to rewatch it, but that was kind of my takeaway from it.
I had a long discussion on the film with Ethan Collins when he was on the podcast last month, and we both are of the side that says we both like it, and he's very religious too. Although I think he's Protestant, so maybe it's less initially affecting to him just because he's not Catholic. But I mean, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought on that, but it's
as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought you were Catholic for some reason, but
no, well, it's because I'm evangelical, and it's really funny because like a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a lot of crossover between evangelical beliefs and Catholic beliefs. It's kind of funny in that sense, but a lot of people think I'm Catholic because I'm always sharing out Catholic stuff on Twitter. But I'm really not. I'm evangelical to the core.
I probably saw you link a Catholic blog at some point and like, oh, that's
Bree Dell, she's a friend of mine. She writes for a Catholic news organization, and I retweet her stuff all the time.
There you go. But yeah, Silence is an immensely complex movie to talk about in regards to what it actually says about religion, and so I don't blame you for taking a negative reaction away, because I've seen atheists praise it as like, oh look, it's a movie that says that religion will fail you and you need to be deprogrammed. I'm like, oh, that's not a fun. But it's obviously a movie about a religion or a missionary failing, so I can see why it would bother people. But Skyfall, I threw that on here.
That's a good film.
Yeah, I mean, between that and Casino Royale, it's one of the two really good Bond films we've gotten in the past 2 decades. So, other than GoldenEye was late '90s. So, let's see. I'm kind of breezing through this. I added the Social Network. I wanted to add a David Fincher movie, but I wasn't sure which one. But I thought this was probably the one that felt the least sleazy to me. So, like, I don't want to go back and watch Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That movie was ugh. At least I remember I was at the time I was watching it on a laptop in a car, and it was just kind of killing time, and I was just like, I hope no one's looking in the windows.
I know, right?
Son of Saul, which is it's a very, very powerful Holocaust movie from a couple of years ago. It has an interesting gimmick where the entire movie is shot from like in almost an extreme close up the entire film. So it's kind of fascinating to watch just how much of the effort went into it, but it's very good. I may add the Tree of Life to this, although I want to see Hidden Life and see if that's how good that is, because I think they should probably add a Terrence Malick movie into the list. What We Do in the Shadows, which is probably the most underrated thing I've seen this decade, but
really, I haven't seen that one.
It's from Taika Waititi, which, depending on how Jojo Rabbit goes, he could go from one of the most in-demand directors to one of the most annoying very quickly. I mean, I'm assuming you've seen the trailer for that.
Oh yeah, Jojo Rabbit. Yeah.
I want to see it.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. That's my takeaway from it.
I mean, it's not like I like Hitler, but I'm great quotes. I'm not on his. I don't want to support it, but nowadays, everything turns into Hitler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. So it could turn into a really pretentious satire about modern politics, and I'm like, no, you're dressed as Hitler. Just enjoy it. I added The Wind Rises, which I know you like anime, so I don't know if you've seen any of the.
I've not seen that one yet, but when I went to I went to an anime con in Pasadena a couple of months ago, and everyone was like, "What? You haven't seen The Wind Rises?" So yeah, I definitely need to see it.
Yeah, I mean it's technically the last Miyazaki film, technically, until he decides to make another one. So. You added Scott Pilgrim. I ended up going with The World's End.
That's a good film. I actually just saw that one recently. I hadn't seen a lot of Edgar Wright's British films, and so I just one week my wife was out of town. I'm like, okay, I'm doing Edgar Wright. We're going all in. I like Baby Driver. I like Scott Pilgrim. We're diving into this.
Oh man, I mean, I remember with all three of the Cornetto films, I was really off put the first time I watched them. Because there's always some element about them that's unsettling the first time you watch it, and then you start realizing that they're actually perfect, and they're just so wonderful every time you rewatch them. I remember the first time I saw The Wind Rises, I was really off put by the fact that the movie ends with the apocalypse, and I was just like, this is half the characters are dead and the world's over because you got drunk in a bar and told the alien gods to screw off. So it's not a happy movie, sort of. But I don't know. I warmed up to it a lot after that first time, and once I got over the fact that the world ends at the end of it. And the last one I have, I'm going down alphabetically at the moment. The The last one I have on the list at the moment is Zero Dark 30.
I have not seen that one, believe it or not. I'm really mad at myself.
Well, Catherine Bigelow is a frustrating director, just because she goes from making something as preachy as The Hurt Locker, and then makes Zero Dark 30, which is probably one of the most, like, morally nuanced and... Well, it's not even necessarily that, because one of the big things about the movie is that it doesn't offer any commentary on what's happening in the movie. Like, you see scenes where a Marine is torturing a man, and the movie just presents it like it is. It doesn't actually say anything about the torture. It just says, this is what happened, this is the cost of what happened, this is the amount of emotional strain it causes to these people, and by the end of the film, you just get a visual understanding of how doing that job just weighs upon these characters to the point where it's barely resolved by the time they get a decade into trying to hunt down Bin Laden. And she immediately turns around and makes Detroit, which is one of the least... I have not watched it yet, but from what I've heard, it's one of the least nuanced and least objective films of the decade. So,
well, also they put a lot of stuff in it that wasn't true. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, like,
yeah, I was seeing that because I actually saw an interview by someone. I hadn't seen the movie at this point. I actually started it and I fell asleep, and I was like, oh well, probably not gonna watch it ever again. But I remember this. I watched an interview with someone who was actually at the Detroit riots, and he was like, it was nothing like the movie was showing. Like, I guess the movie shows archival footage, but then it splices in like scenes that the director made, and so he was like, yeah, that never happened. Oh yeah, no, that wasn't what happened. Oh yeah, that person didn't exist or something. You know, it was
yeah, like, it's supposed to be pretty fictionalized. Crowder did a good video on it because apparently his dad was there.
That was a good takedown of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's most of the list at the moment. It's probably gonna grow and shrink over the next 2 months as I try to figure out if anything that comes out should be on it or not. Although I'm not sure anything actually will end up being on the list. There's a lot I want to see, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. So,
yeah, same here. I have a list of movies I want to see. Death of Stalin is on it. I haven't seen it yet, like I said. And before I finalize the list, and some of the stuff I said may get taken off. Probably some of the ones that I'm like, okay, Jacob, you're just putting this on here just to piss people off. Maybe take that one off. Mine will probably. So for those of you listening to this Groupthink podcast, my list isn't finalized either. I'm just in the early stages of developing it.
Yeah, I mean, the next few months, it's going to be kind of crazy movie-wise. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm worried about, but there's also a lot of stuff I think could actually turn out pretty good. Dr. Sleep probably could be all right. Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood looks really fun, although it's probably going to have problems. Your favorite director has a new movie out, Knives Out, so...
You mean Clue with gore?
Well, I was actually kind of fascinated to see it, and then I started seeing all of the hot takes on Twitter the moment it dropped at TIFF, and I was like, oh no, what are you doing? You're going for gold in terms of political controversy, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like I thought he was gonna like tone it down and be like, oh, he's gonna make a nice soft little detective thriller to kind of ease him in and prove he's a viable director, and like, oh no, he's really going all in on the progressive politics. It's like, this is gonna.
I can tell it's a movie for the critics. Like, it drives me crazy because, like, I can't remember who it was, but it was another conservative film buff. For those who are just listening, I did scare quotes. And they said, oh, I didn't like X film. And I can't remember what it was, but it was one that I really liked. And they said, I didn't like it. It was such an audience-pleasing film. And so I retweeted it, and I'm like, every film should try to please the audience. Otherwise, it doesn't make money. And I know that's kind of a hot take, but I mean, what I meant by that is I feel like movies need to have an audience, even like, because I feel like Fincher is one of these directors who his movies aren't for everyone, but he has an audience to them. Like, I love David Fincher films. In fact, I even like Alien 3. I'm like one of the 5 people who like that film.
I dig it.
So, so that's what I meant by that. But people were saying, oh, you're saying that Fast and Furious 7 is a great movie. I'm like, no, I'm not. I think it's a fun movie. Don't think it's great. Whatever. So I kind of feel like Knives Out, it's going to be one of these movies that it's playing to the critics, not to the moviegoers. And this is one of the reasons why I say Rian Johnson is a hack. He's not really interested in developing a fan base. He's just, to me, now, again, I haven't seen Brick. Maybe now that it's on Netflix, I'll stomach it and try to watch it. But I feel like his films, like, they imitate other people, and they don't. And he doesn't really have a standout film. Like I said, I haven't seen Brick. I'll give it a try now that it's on Netflix. But
I'll say that in terms of audience appeal, I think that Knives Out would appeal to the people who like Murder on the Orient Express. I don't know if you saw that, but
I actually thought that was an underrated film. It didn't make my list, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was good.
I think that there's obviously kind of an audience for smaller scale dramas and thrillers like that, especially when you start getting into award season. So it's not like I don't think aren't going to be people that are willing to see it since it's getting a huge promotional push. It's just the politics, I think, is going to make it really unpalatable to a lot of people. Like everyone I've heard that I trust that's seen it has said it's a well-made film. It's fun to watch. It's also extremely and overtly political. Like, it's not even just something they bury in the subtext. It's like overt. So I'm like, this might be a fun thing to watch, but this is also going to inspire a worse film conversation than Joker did. So
well, and also too, like going back to Murder on the Orient Express, Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah,
am I pronouncing that right? Branagh. Okay. He is really good at casting his films.
Exceptionally good.
Yes, and so even if you, like, Murder on the Orient Express had a couple of, issues with it, but you went, man, what a cast. Like, at the end of it, I mean, the way he casted that film was perfection. And so, and I really feel like Knives Out, it was, I felt like it wasn't casted well. With the exception of Daniel Craig. I think Daniel Craig is par for the course for a role like that. But I feel like a lot of the other cast members, it was Rian Johnson trying to okay, I've got Chris Evans, so I'm going to pull in the MCU people. I feel like it was more the cast, and which, don't get me wrong, Chris Evans I think is a good actor, but I'm just saying I don't feel like it was keyed. It was keyed well. I feel like it was just, the casting was just kind of random, kind of like The Dark Knight Rises was. Nolan. I like The Dark Knight Rises, but I feel like after Heath Ledger died, Nolan was like, okay, how do I cast this next film outside of my good one? So Tom Hardy as Bane, and it turned out okay, but it's not really what you're expecting, especially since Bane is Spanish, and Anne Hathaway. I know there's a split. Some people say she's good. Some people say she's bad. I say she's mediocre as Catwoman. Matthew Modine, great choice for kind of a foil for Commissioner Gordon. But, I feel like casting is kind of a lost art in films these days,
Abrams is good at it, but...
Abrams is a great cast. He's great at casting his films.
I would say with Knives Out, it's an eclectically cast film because a lot of the choices are there's a lot of really solid character actors like Christopher Plummer and Michael Shannon. Like, yeah. I wouldn't say those are people you would hire for their box office draw.
That's true.
Maybe like Jamie Lee Curtis, if someone's a really huge Halloween fan, will go to see your Agatha Christie homage, but. I don't
know. Michael Shannon, he's got the Martha-verse pool. He's from the DCEU. So, but yeah, you're right. Christopher Plummer, Jamie Lee Curtis, for sure. I do see what you're saying there.
Yeah. I could definitely see it feeling really kind of on the nose, most of it, because a lot of those actors are some of the largest actors, like, working today. So seeing Chris Evans next to a lot of, like, not mid-range, but certainly character actors who tend to underperform, have their movies underperform, is kind of strange. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna be like, hey, it's Michael Shannon, the dude from Shape of Water. I mean, like, I will, because I've seen all of his movies. I've seen a lot of his non-Man of Steel stuff, but I don't think anyone's gonna be like, is that Zod? But
no, you could have a point there. Maybe I'm off base, but it's so funny because when I think Michael Shannon, I think Iceman. I actually like that film. I was surprised by how much I liked it. But and that's another one with Chris Evans, so maybe they'll get some Iceman crowd.
Oh man, it's like, hey, I love Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Glad to see he's getting work.
That's a good point. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah, so I'm kind of petering out on this end. I think it's kind of time to call it a night. So
yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for coming on again, and this was a fun conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on. I had a great time.
Sure thing. I'll have you on again once you've had another trending moment and we've caused another earth-shattering apocalypse on film Twitter. So get to work.
Oh, don't worry, it's coming.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.